Jambo Rafiki, I'm Elizabeth from Kasiwa82 and I hope you are doing really well. If you're new to my channel, welcome, and if you've been here before, welcome back. I post 2 videos a week. On Tuesdays I talk about all things books, and on Fridays I talk about all things journals and creative play. It's time for another Friday flip, and what I'm going to do today is go through the January pages I created in my creative/art journal/sketchbook. If you take a look at the journals I'm using in 2021 video, I will link that for you. What I decided to do this year is, as opposed to use the traveler's notebook inserts that I've used for the past several years to do my creative play, I got tired of working over the hump, right? So the thicker you make the book, the harder it is to work in it. And so I wanted to do this year was work in single pages. And what I'm using is this old Franklin Covey storage binder. It's kind of like an archive binder that I have in my stash. And if you've been on my channel for a while, you know I'm a big proponent of use up your stash, shop your stash, instead of going and buying new stuff. So this is what I have decided to use this year, is kind of this really nice thick binder that I kind of keep on my desk and I play with it. So let's go ahead and do the flip. So it's a 3-ring storage binder. Now I'm using the Franklin Covey punches, so there's a lot more holes than these 3 rings. And I haven't decided yet how I'm going to bind these finished pages, because they're single pages. So we'll talk about that towards the end of this video. So what I have in the front is kind of one of those credit card pockets. This is for business cards that I basically have rolled up some washi and stuck in there. And I also have one of these pouches, again like a Ziploc kind of pouch, and I've kind of decided to use that to store some ephemera and collage material that I might want to use sooner rather than later. Now again, both of these pieces of plastic things, whatever we want to call them, were actually in my supplies. This is back in the day when I would do all my planning and task management on paper. I do all of that electronically today, and I can talk about that if you're interested. But in the meantime, as I was going through my old supplies, I found these 2, and I'm like, they're perfect, I'll use them. Again, big proponent, don't throw out your stash. You never know when you're going to repurpose it. So I have one of these dividers, again, just kind of a way to kind of keep my months separate, but they are not going to all last in here because already January has gotten really thick. So what I'm doing this year is I'm kind of starting out the months with this calendar page. Now, this is from 2016, I believe it is, and I got it from a friend. And, you know, again, I really like the art, and there was no use to, and I've been thinking about how am I going to use this? And again, I decided, why not? The days actually match up this year for some of the months. So the months that they match up, I'm just going to go ahead and use that. And I just went ahead and put some washi there to cover up the 2016. I might put a quote here. I had planned on putting a quote there. Am I going to do it? I don't know. In the meantime, I just keep creating. So this is, again, watercolor paper with a whole bunch of acrylic in the background and tissue paper kind of collage on top of that. Same thing here. And one of the things that I have talked about before on the channel, and I know I've had many questions about this as well, is do you create every day, and you know, how long does it take you to create these pages? So I wanted to just pause and point that out here, because this journal flip that I'm doing for you are my January pages, and I started on January 16th. So I think it's one of the things that we get caught up in sometimes is we have a plan for, if it doesn't happen starting the 1st or a particular date, it is almost too late to start. And my feeling is it's never too late to start. It's go ahead and pick up the pages when you're called to pick them up and just start creating in them, right? Because, you know, once you get, there's something about, who was it who said that? Inspiration finds you working. And I think once it's the hurdle of getting started, that's the hard part. For me anyway, I've definitely found that to be true. Once I get started, a snowball effect starts to happen. Okay, so January 16th is when I started, and then you'll see I'm pretty consistent for the rest of the month. So yeah, I could have sat there and you could beat yourself up for I didn't do every day of the month. It doesn't matter. My advice is always start when you are inspired to start, or if you're not inspired, sit down and make a list. Highly recommend this, right? It's a very simple way to do it. You write currently, and then you make a list of the different things that you're reading, watching, eating, creating, whatever the case might be. You can find these lists online. I highly recommend going ahead and doing that because, again, once you've got the page out and you're working on them, it's easier to start doing something. So like I said, I just really loved being able to work on individual sheets. So this is another one of those collage sheets that has got multiple layers of tissue paper as well as book pages. And it's one of the cutoffs, leftovers from the 100-day project I did several years ago. It's been sitting in my stash. I might as well use it. I have postcards that come from friends. Again, you're not going to love every page, or at least I certainly don't. And I take the pressure off myself. I'm not necessarily trying to create a beautiful page, a beautiful layout, a work of art. All I'm doing, and I say this all the time, take a line for a walk. And so my journals tend to look very similar. They've got sketches in them. It's from a show I was watching called Ethos. It's a Turkish show that's dubbed into English on Netflix, I believe it was. And again, just sketching kind of the people that I was looking at in this show. There's some washi. There's always writing. I mean, that's, as I've said before, that's kind of where my comfort zone is, the writing. Here's an example of using a, a menu or a card that comes from a restaurant that we have, just keeping notes. Now, this is an interesting idea. I know I did this many, many years ago, is what I would do is take a screenshot of my Instagram page, which is, again, by the way, linked for you down below in case you're interested. And what I did was I would take a screenshot of the Instagram page and then I would go ahead and print them out into 4x6s. I always felt like I would do something with those, but I haven't really come up with an interesting way to use them. So I've just kind of had them in my stash. And this year I decided, you know what, I'm going to use my own artwork and photos as collages. So all I did was just cut that into strips, and that's what you see there. Again, prompts like today is an easy way to come up with ways to do writing. Writing is my jam, and everything you see here is stash that I've had in my supplies. Nothing you see is bought, okay? It was bought at one point because when I was doing paper scrapbooking, for example, I got a lot of paper pads. And so I've got all these colored cardstock, and I'm like, use them up. I don't use colored cardstock, and I don't do paper scrapbooking anymore. All of that has gone electronically for me, right? So going through my supplies, I found this picture of my dad and my eldest niece, which is just one of the pictures that I love. Again, here's one of those, the same idea. It's an Instagram screenshot of one of my Instagram pages, and I went ahead and printed it out. And it's got different artwork I was doing from the 100-day collage project, as well as a picture of my mom there. Sometimes I'm just doing random doodles and sketching. So again, this is a piece of promotional material that came from the Museum of Fine Arts. It's a Rothko piece, right? So I have that in my stash, and I'm like, I love the simplicity of it. This woman is cut out from a Victorian fashion illustration book I've talked about previously on my channel. I just fussy cut her out. This is a perfect thing to do when you're listening to a book or a podcast or watching something that is not, just background noises. You don't need to watch the visuals, if you will. All you need is the audio doing that. And now, again, when I stuck her down here, I thought what I was going to do was put some text there, a quote there. I might do that at some point this year. I might not. Either way, I'm kind of liking how that looks, and I move on. And so what do you do with this promotional materials? On the back of it, there was a lot of white space. So all I did was cover up some of the pieces that had some text and went and used it as a journaling block, right? Created some collage there. There's a spot for me to put some journaling in. For those of us who are, and that's all of us at this point, who are in lockdown and continue to be in lockdown, and 2020 was a crazy year, and this year vaccines hopefully are going to work, but we've missed traveling. And one of the things I found is, this is from a trip to Puerto Rico many years ago. I basically ended up creating postcards from some of the pictures that I took on that trip. And so I went back and found one of these postcards that I still have in my stash, and I thought, okay, might as well use it. And again, instead of mailing it, I mailed several of these out, but I decided to just go ahead and, you know, do some writing and put some other materials on it. Now, again, one of the things I'm loving about working in individual pages is that I can make them bulkier. There's one of the problems I had, or the challenges I had when I was working with a bound book, is when you start to add, you know, all these different layers, there's just a lot more bulk to the page, which makes the book splay out, which makes the book fatter. And while it looks really good and cool at the end, working in it or writing in it becomes much more difficult as the book fattens up. So I talked about this in one of my earlier videos. I kind of really like adding stitching as borders or just kind of as an accent to pages. Now, my sewing machine is busted and has been for several years. I'm at some point going to fix it. But in the meantime, I have some of these pages already in my stash, right? Because I already pre-prepped them. Because I'm a big proponent of when you're doing something, do it in bulk. So when I stitch pages to paper, I go ahead and just do several stacks of them at the same time. So there's always stuff sitting in my stack that I can use. Postcard. Again, here's one of those promotional materials that came from the MFA. Went to see this exhibit, which I loved. And I just used the back, again, as a way to do some writing. Left some of the text that I wanted to have left on the page. And then, but again, you could have covered up that entire thing, and I'll show you one of those coming up here as well. This particular piece of artwork came from Pinterest, I believe. I printed it out. I just really love that image there. Again, here's another one. This is watercolor paper that's got kind of, you know, when kids are practicing writing the alphabet. So I have a couple of these books left over when my nephews were really young and learning how to write the alphabet. And it's kind of really, a cool way to use up those pages, because what are you going to do with them? They can all read and write now, right? They're driving for Christ's sake. So it's like I don't need to worry about that anymore. So I, again, stitched that on. I was watching Danny Gregory and kind of doing some sketches from watching the video. For some reason, you know, I was reading Dune this last month in January. And as always, there's a link to my Goodreads account down below. Come there and say hi if you're a reader. And for some reason, even though it was winter here in January, not for some reason, because I was reading Dune, which is a hot desert environment, I was kind of the cactus was on my mind, and I was so thirsty while I was reading that book. So kind of capturing some of that. Again, the blog is still there, but I used to update my blog more regularly. I haven't done that in several years, but this was the header for my blog. And again, I found this picture in my stash, and I'm like, might as well use it. Again, promotional material from a museum. I was planning on putting some text there, decided to leave it alone, and just added one of the pieces of collage material that I get in flyers that come in the mail that I really like. Again, like I said, cactus, right? Snow day. Like I said, so I have very similar kinds of pages in that I like text, I like some art, I like some collage material. And this particular journal has got all kinds of paper. There's cardstock, there is watercolor paper, there's, you know, postcards and all of that kind of stuff. And I kind of love that as well. Picture of my nephew when he was really young. So again, we've been having a really warm, wonderful winter in New England, so kind of playing with that. These images, I think I got inspiration from this somewhere on Pinterest as well. Creating grids. I've been talking about that as I'm going through my older journals, how much I'm loving looking at grids. And I've got more of those in my February pages as well. So here was just kind of blocking those off with masking tape, adding down some watercolors, and then just playing with a marker. Again, promotional material that comes in a flyer, right? I liked the image in the front. I just went ahead and added a sticker for the date. And then the back has got a place for me to do writing. Another piece of cardstock that has got things that came in the mail, that came from the mail. And this was a postcard I picked up somewhere along the line. I cut it into a tag size, went ahead and labeled, taped scrapbook paper on the back, went ahead and wrote in it, punched a hole, and it resides right there. Okay, so here's another example. I tend not to add a lot of ribbons or brads. I have brads in my stash that I've had for many, many years, decades, okay? And they're a really fun accent to a page, but I tend not to do that because, again, when you add that to a book, a bound book, when you go to write on that, there's this bump that you got to work through. So yes, a writing board helps, but still, it's just not really necessarily easy to work around. So I just don't do that. So I'm really delighted to be able to do some of these kinds of more bulky, if you will, items in this particular journal, because it's ring bound. I don't have to worry about working on the page. When I want to work on a particular page, I just open it up, take it out, go and work on it, and then bring it back. So I'm loving that. The Catcher in the Rye, a book I really loved, and this came in the flyer came in the picture came in a mail, one of the flyers. Doing some sketching of art that I found online while I'm listening to a Taylor Swift song. And again, so, you know, kind of the idea of right here, right now, what's happening. Everything here you see image-wise came in the mail. A girl that I kind of like the idea of how she's so covered on the top, and then meanwhile she's wearing shorts on the bottom. I think I saw this image somewhere online. So this is the, you know, one of those dividers that I use that come up in the next, for my next page, so I can easily find it. So those are the January pages. Here it is. I'm starting February. You can see I haven't covered the 2016 and I haven't covered that 29 yet, okay, which I will do. But I've already started the February pages. So what I wanted to do was just quickly go through, here are my pages for January, and so you can see how I'm creating this year, and really I am loving working in a ring-bound planner so that I don't have to deal with the boundness. There's certain things I love about bound books, but when I'm playing like this, when I'm adding things in, that just really becomes a hurdle that I have to, you know, deal with. So what I haven't decided yet is how I'm going to bind these, right? So because what I'm going to do after this video is take all of the January pages out of this journal, because this binder, because it's already becoming too thick, just from a closure perspective, as you can see. And I haven't decided whether I'm going to bind this using kind of the single page binding method, or if I'm just going to take 3 book rings and just add them, and then that's how that's going to be bound. And I know what I will be doing is adding a cardboard cover. So when this gets wrapped up towards the end of the year, probably even before that, I will start, once I decide how I'm going to do the binding, I'm going to create thin cardboard covers that will probably have some kind of covering on top of that will keep the months together. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, can I do it by quarter, or is each month going to be so thick that it can stand alone by itself? So that's what I have for you today. I'd love to know how you are creating this year. I'd love to know if you like working in bound journals, or if you actually really like the idea of ring bound and being able to work on single pages. I do know people who take a spiral bound notebook, take the spirals out, work on each page individually, and then rebind those pages using the spiral binding, which I think is a great idea too. So that's another way you could kind of create using a bound book with single pages. So let me know if you have any questions or comments, and if you have any links to journals or videos that you have or posts that you have, I'd love to take a look at those as well. Until I talk to you next time, happy creating. Bye.